Michael, let's start with you then. You are an award-winning Northern Virginia author. See, Northern Virginia. You're coming down here into non-Northern Virginia territory here this weekend.
It's good to be here.
As well. So are you going to present at the Book and Arts Fair?
Yeah, I am. At noon, I'm going to be doing a reading of Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, and I'm going to be doing all the cool piratey voices,
Yar.
accents. Yar.
That's all I can do is the yar part right there. That's very cool.
Thank you for coming. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm the author of Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy on the high seas, and I'm going to read you the first story from the book. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. This one is titled Gambo. Have you ever stared straight into the eyes of death and scoffed? The old man asked. John Chaplin was so caught up in scribbling down the fisherman's words he hadn't noticed the question. He was halfway into his interviewee's last sentence when he realized it was directed at him. Oh, he stopped himself. He looked up from his notepad and a bulging ice blue eye met him. He nearly jumped from his chair. The fisherman's buggy, unblinking right eye quivered at him, awaiting reply. Well? John froze for a moment in the old man's intense gaze. The walls of the living room warped and groaned, and the fisherman's dilapidated houseboat rocked groggily in the stormy gusts. I don't know, John finally answered. The man huffed, then got up from his stool and hobbled into the kitchen. When he yanked at the small handle of his tiny fridge, the entire door detached. Dagnabbit, he muttered. The young journalist sighed and pressed the stop button on his recorder. This guy's insane, he decided. His claims are ridiculous. A monster fish? Please. News should be facts, not a crazy old fisherman's tall tales. John glanced outside. Rain slithered over the window, making the glass itself appear liquefied. He squinted past the distorted portal and noticed just how extreme the storm had become. The rain fell so rapidly it looked to be spitting up from the bay into the sky, where sudden flurries of wind carried the droplets in all directions. The fisherman's dwelling groaned as another powerful gust swept in and tipped it almost completely sideways. Knickknacks and furniture slid to the right along the inclining surfaces, including John's chair. Fretfully, he grabbed for the windowsill to steady himself. The old man didn't budge. He simply shifted his weight accordingly until the structure swayed to become level again. John had never been on a boat before, much less a houseboat, and he didn't like it. He couldn't fathom how anyone could put up with the constant clamor, creaking and groaning, especially in this kind of weather, and of course the endless rocking of the floor. He glanced out the window again, this time at the shore. The sand was dark, sodden with rainwater. That'll be fun to walk in. John's gaze drifted to his newly shined loafers. After a long struggle with the refrigerator door, the old man finally gave up and propped it against his box. Bah! He tossed his hand up and returned with a soda in his fist. The beverage hissed as he pried up the tab. He licked the fizz that bubbled from the top and took a seat on the stool in front of John. Now, where was I? As he talked, soda and spittle escaped the spaces in his mouth where teeth had fallen out. It landed on John's notes. The journalist cringed. He snatched a tissue from one pocket to wipe it away, then hand sanitizer from another. The old man took another swig. Let's see, he thought aloud. More spittle. Aggravated, John repeated the process. Napkin, sanitizer, then he shielded his notepad from the line of fire. Why on earth did they assign me to this story? John wondered. Because I'm new, that's why. It's just some filler piece they dumped on the new guy. John turned his recorder back on, readied his pen to write, and waited for the fisherman to start speaking again. But instead, the old man just stared at him with his bulging right eye. He finally spoke. Chaplain, why are you taking notes when you've got that recording doohickey with you? John stared at him blankly for a moment, then answered simply, I like to take notes. Well, don't. You've got your whatchamagizmo recording me, so let it. And look me in the eye while I talks to you. It makes the story better. The bulbous eye quivered. Mr. Hoffner, didn't I tell you to call me Winslow? No. Oh. Well, call me Winslow. Mr. Hoffner's too formal. Got it, Chaplain? John opened his mouth to reply, but before he could answer, Winslow spoke again. Alrighty. See that storm out there? Imagine it 10 times worse. That's what me and Hank was sailing in. Who's Hank? John interposed. He's my first mate, of course, Winslow yelled as if it was common knowledge. Chaplain, why are you interrupting me? I wasn't trying to. I was just, Now I've lost me train of thought. Storytelling's a delicate art form, you know. John pushed a shaky hand under his glasses and rubbed his eyes, waiting for the fisherman to re-find his place. Winslow's eye quivered in recollection. The waters were rough. It was like they was angry with us, attacking the boat, like big old fish trying to knock us over. The skies was angry with us too, it seemed, shooting its lightning down at us, blowing its wind at us, and that full moon. She teamed up with the water and made these big old waves to shove us back. John listened to the old man babble in his broken English, wondering if amid his ramblings a decent quote would emerge for him to use in his story. Winslow went on. Now that I think about it, I don't think the waves and the wind and the moon was angry at all. In fact, I think the elements were trying to warn us about something, trying to keep us away. John's eyes glinted at that last statement, and he snuck the line into his notepad. Winslow caught him. Chaplain, what are you doing? Didn't I tell you to let the recorder do its job? John wiped a few droplets of spit from his face. Yes, but none. Recorders record. The listeners listen. Got it? Yes, sir. Good. Can I ask a question, though? Of course. What did the fish look like? I'm getting to that. Be patient. Winslow cleared his throat, then opened his mouth to speak. He paused. Blast it, where was I? The elements were trying to warn you about something. All right, they were, and we was ignoring them. We pushed on through the swells. Don't really know why we decided to take off that night. I could tell it was gonna rain. My knees told me so, and my knees is never wrong. Maybe it's because the fishing's been bad lately, I don't know. But for whatever reason, we was there. Then, it hit us. What, an idea, a realization? No, the monster. She ran straight into us, nearly capsized the boat. Could you tell what it was at that point? Nah. All I could tell was it was a big one. And whatever it was, I wanted it on the line. So I cast the biggest lure I had, the lucky silver one. And sure enough, she bit straight into it. John sat forward in his seat, awaiting the next part of the story, but without warning, Winslow got up and walked away. Wait, John called, louder than he anticipated. What happened after that? Hang on a sec, Chaplain, I'm out of root beer, the fisherman replied. He grabbed another can of soda from the broken fridge before sitting back down. John bounced his leg impatiently while the old man took a long intermission to gulp down his drink. He wiped some soda from his scraggly gray beard and smacked his gums. That nabbit has gone warm, he murmured. Please, Mr. Hoffner, continue the story, John pleaded. The fisherman shot a studying glare at the journalist. John remembered. Please, Winslow. Alrighty, Winslow announced. Here we go. He held a pensive stare at the wall. Blast it, where did I leave off? The fish took the bait! All right. And she took more than the bait, you see. She pulled me right in, too. Really? Yeah. I didn't let go of the line, neither. I could hear Hank yelling something at me like, let go of the pole! Let go, you buffoon! But I just held on. Could you see it? See what? The monster! Oh, yeah! Winslow guffawed, but quickly became serious. I saw her, all right. And I ain't never seen nothing like this afore. Her eyes were pitch dark. No light shone in there. Not even reflected off them. However, they seemed to glow. I know that sounds strange, but they were radiating their darkness outward. Black spheres with dark auras around them, scariest peepers I ever saw. How large was it? Could you tell? Of course I could tell. She was about the size of a great white. Maybe it was a shark. No, this weren't no shark. She had a head like an alligator, body smooth and streamlined like a dolphin, a big old tail like a whale, and 4 little webbed feet on her underbelly. What color was it? Dark on top, light underneath. That's a great white's coloration, John thought. Are you positive it wasn't a shark? Yes, I'm positive, I'm telling ya! I saw this thing with me own eyes. When her mouth opened up, I could see fire. Fire whirling around in her throat. A fire-breathing fish? Aye, Chaplain. That gudgeon's breath burned so hot the ocean couldn't douse it. Winslow realized he was standing just inches from the reporter. He cleared his throat and reeled back his intensity, then strolled, standing before a sliding door that led to a small balcony overlooking the waves. It weren't no shark. John was overwhelmed with amazement and skepticism. Nothing like what Winslow described existed. It was exciting and fanciful, the stuff of myth and legend, but it couldn't be real. The certainty in the fisherman's words said otherwise. The journalist checked his recorder, making sure the light was still blinking. It was, thankfully, since his notepad sat beside it, untouched for some time now. What happened next? John turned to Winslow for the conclusion of the story, but saw he had stepped out onto the balcony. John watched as the fisherman stared down the storm and dug into the shirt pocket of his dark flannel. Smoke break, John assumed. He went to pause his recording, but stopped when, instead of cigarettes, Winslow took out a small brass whistle on a chain. John tilted his head and squinted through the waterlogged window as Winslow blew into the peculiar instrument a few times, finishing his tune with a bird-like trill. Thunder struck. Winslow surveyed the bay a while longer, nodded, then pocketed the odd whistle and came back inside. The houseboat grumbled as Winslow sealed out the fussy howls of wind and caught the journalist's confused expression. Winslow pointed at him. Care for a warm root beer, Chaplain? John smiled. No thank you, Winslow. All right, then. He disappeared into his tiny, doorless fridge. I would like to hear the rest of your adventure, though. Winslow called back an affirmative noise from inside the fridge. He surfaced with a whole roasted chicken on a plate, which he set carefully on the counter, muttering, "Almost dinner time," before snatching the last root beer. He returned to his stool and took a seat before the eager journalist. "Okay," Winslow said. He paused. His expression turned pensive again. "The monster pulled you underwater," John reminded him. "Right. Anyways, the beast pulled me down, all the way down toward the abyss. I reckon that's where she lives. It was dark and shadowy all around, but I could still see in front of me on account of her blazing breath. She didn't have no gills, so I think her fire boils the water into vapor and she gets by on the fumes." John's face lit up with childlike wonderment. Winslow continued, "I didn't have that luxury, you see. I needed air, and quick. Finally, I was able to get onto the beastie's back, and I started pummeling that thing best I could. She thrashed about, then let out this terrible roar that pulsed through the water and hurt my ears. Simulating the beast's maw with his arms and its teeth with his fingers, the old man threw open his hands and yelled, 'Grah!' Thunder exploded outside and short-circuited the houseboat. John let out a half gasp when the face of the monster took shape through the twisted illuminance of lightning and moonlight that cluttered the shady room. When he blinked, the frightening visage changed back into Winslow's hands. John released the startled breath he had sucked in. Eyes still focused on his listener, Winslow hammered his fist against the wall and the lights buzzed back to life. The fisherman coolly picked up where he left off. "I was punching her in the neck like you'd punch a shark in the gills. But that didn't help because she had no gills to punch." John leaned forward, though he was already on the edge of his seat. "So I popped her one in the eye!" Winslow exclaimed, demonstrating his uppercut. That did it. The monster thrashed again, then went swimming on upward. She soared out of the water, me on her back, and crashed onto the shore. Then I stood right up, unscathed. The monster had gone and knocked herself out on impact. "That's incredible," John cheered. The fisherman grinned at his enthusiasm. "What happened to the fish?" "Oh," Winslow laughed. "Well, we was evenly matched, it seemed. Now that I was back on land, seemed only fair she went back to the water. I gave her a push," Winslow slurped some root beer. "Next I looked, she clawed back to the waves and vanished. Hank docked the boat and came running soon after, asking if I'd seen it." Winslow chuckled. "Of course I seen it, I rode the thing." "Me and that fish had an understanding. Did you ever figure out what this animal was?" "Matter of fact, I did research it. Hadn't been to a library in the longest time. Came across only one other story of a beastie like the one I saw. One apparently washed ashore sometime in '83 in the Gambia. They called it Gambo." "Fascinating," John said. 1,000 more questions swilled in his mind, but before he could ask any, the recorder beeped, indicating the memory card was full. He picked up the tired device as Winslow chuckled. "Just in the nick of time, eh?" "Looks like it. Thank you for sharing your story, Winslow." "My pleasure." John gathered his things and immediately started choosing the words he used in his headline. Winslow Hoffner's incredible encounter with a monster fish. Such an amazing tale. But was it only a tale? News should be facts, John remembered and sank in his chair. The story was too amazing to overlook. People had to hear it. He shook his head, battling with his thoughts. Winslow noticed John's frustration. "What's the matter, Chaplain?" "Your story's incredible, but I don't know if anyone would believe it." "Don't you?" "I do, because I can hear it in your voice. The way you recount it is so certain, but I don't know if I can tell this thrilling tale the way you can, with that certainty." Winslow scratched at his knit cap as thunder rattled the walls. After a moment, he said, "Why don't you follow me into this here balcony?" John looked confused. Winslow picked up the roasted chicken from the counter. "Storm ain't slow and might as well enjoy it." The clouds were dyed deep indigo. John sat on a creaky fold-out chair on the balcony while Winslow stood. A thin awning fluttering above barely protected them from the windswept rain. The roasted chicken sat untouched on its plate, save for a single wing John was allotted. "All I can spare," Winslow said. John glanced at the remainder of the meaty bird. He thanked him, shivered, and took a bite, tracing the fisherman's gaze across the dark, stroppy currents before a familiar sound pierced the wind. Winslow blew his strange instrument, whistling low, high, then low again. The clouds thundered in response. "What is that?" John asked. "Bows and pipe?" Winslow whistled once more. Low, high, low, trill. "But what's it for?" A thunderous response, this time from below. The water surface frothed. John's seat squeaked as he shot up, face ghostly. Winslow's massive right eye caught him. The icy blue iris gleamed like titanium through the shade. It blinked. "Take a look at this," Winslow said. Lightning arced, water boiled. The fisherman heaved the leftover chicken over the railing as a great beast burst from the ring of foam, rising and roaring. Fire churned in her gullet, charring the meal as she snapped it up whole. John dropped his wing bone and gawped at himself in the monster's pitch-dark eyes. His likeness, both swallowed and reflected, casted back at him from a deep and distant blackness like the soul of a wishing well. The image changed and rushed forward as the eye seemed to flash and steam hissed through the spaces in her gappy fangs. Told you Gambo and me had an understanding. John couldn't find the words to respond. The beast went back under. A flicker of fiery light displaced the murk beneath the rippling surface, revealing a shadow form unlike anything he'd ever seen. 15 feet long, a head like an alligator, streamlined body like a dolphin, a tail like a whale, and 4 webbed feet. Awestruck, John instinctively reached to take his camera from his pocket, but Winslow grabbed his wrist. "The best stories are almost unbelievable," he said. "Now you have your certainty." A massive tail tossed in the moonlit waves. The beast slipped back to the depths and into legend as John beamed an excited smile. "Go right up a thrilling tale." Thank you. What do you think?
How long did it take you to write that book?
This book, it was made of a few, we'll go into the question and answer session. It was made of a few stories that I started in high school. I did a few more in college, and I love the character so much that I started writing more, and it took me about a year to put it all together after that.
So does journalism run as a theme through the
Yes. So John, he's the only character where we can hear his thoughts, and he's sort of like our lens into Winslow's world. Winslow is the main character, but it's a lot like journalism, where you're telling someone else's story. So John is the observer, and he's also the most dynamic character because he undergoes this change. He goes from the skeptical journalist, as you saw him start out as, to seeping into Winslow's world, which is unreal and unbelievable and incredible, and comes to hear more of his stories, and a few other characters get introduced who are similarly skeptical.
So him revealing himself to the reporter, does it change both of them?
It does. It has some significant impacts that maybe Winslow didn't suspect in the final story. Yeah. He's been telling his stories to a couple of his friends. Keeley, who is introduced in the second story, is a very skeptical guy, and he sort of tells him these stories just to bother him. And that's sort of like the main place where he'd be telling his stories in Keeley's Bayside Eatery. But he decided for whatever reason, he decides to tell this one to John. I guess it's the most recent one. And that has some profound impacts, especially in the final story, that he didn't expect.
So Winslow is one-eyed?
He has 2 eyes. It's just one is unusually bulgy. So I don't know. Too much salt water? I don't know. It's a mystery. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
For a minute there, I thought that he was the monster.
There are some interesting parallels between Winslow and Gambo. They have very unusual eyes.
Yeah.
They have gappy teeth and gappy fangs.
And they're very abrupt.
Yeah, they're abrupt.
Yeah.
They
Fiery.
The sort of fisherman's tales was a big inspiration for
Are
me.
these all fisherman tales? Are these
It's all the tales of Winslow, all the incredible accounts of Winslow.
primarily about the sea, or does it vary?
It's the bay. There's a couple lake monsters.
Okay.
One that's sort of in a quarry that's like flooded. So they're all nautical. They'll take place, and I'll show you some of the pictures in here. Because the trouble with mermaids is the second story.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, meet me out by the front entrance.
Who
And I can
did
show
the
you.
illustration?
I did. I
Did
did
you?
all the
I'll
illustrations.
find that. Let me see.
I'm 100% independent. Yeah, sure. You can pass it around if you like.
And are you a seafaring person? Are you a sailor?
I've always been fascinated with the ocean. I have only been on a boat a couple times, but my father was in the Navy, and so he's like a living encyclopedia for me to be like, what do you call this part of the ship?
And does your journalist explore some of his own imagination, or is he a perceived writer of the information that's provided to him?
He becomes there's an editor in his life that doesn't like the type of stories that he's writing, but they're popular, and he begins to sort of start to forge his own path and drift into Winslow's world more. And as he drifts into Winslow's world, that affects his life and his more fact-based world. So, yeah.
So have you produced this book yourself too? You said you're
I'm
totally independent?
100% independent. I'm self-published. I have my own company. I started my own company when I was 13, doing illustrated children's chapter books called Chicken Boy. And,
your Chicken Boy.
That's right. And this is my latest book.
That's good.
So I'm still doing my own illustrations.
It is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great.
So
And your first book was awesome.
how do you market your book? Can you do this effectively as a unattached? You go through.
It's a lot of work. You're basically, as an indie publisher, you do everything yourself. So I'm the publicist, I'm the marketer, I'm the graphic designer, and making all the phone calls. So it's all me right now, and I'm just trying to do as much as I can myself to get it out there and help it reach people who adore the stories and cherish the characters as much as I do. All right, so let's pack it up. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to be
Thank you.
and I'd love to see y'all again at my